You see him on the news.
CNN.com contributor, Dean Obeidallah. So, Dean...
Watch him at comedy clubs.
When I say Mecca, do you think of a holy place or an urban clothing line?
Read his articles. And you hear him on the radio. The Dean Obeidallah Show is on live right here on SiriusXM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters of this mighty resistance. Monday, April 22nd, I'm Dean Obeidallah. We're live for the next 3 hours. And as always, I hope to be your MBFF. I'm here for you. I hope you had a good weekend. I hope you had some fun. I did some TV. I was on Reverend Al's show on MSNBC Saturday and Joy Reid's show Sunday morning. And in both places, I shared what you called and you told me from Thursday and Friday, because both Joy Reid and Reverend Al said, what are your listeners saying about should there be impeachment or not? And I truly view this as a privilege to have an opportunity to speak to the progressive base around the nation. I also love the opportunity to share your voice on a national stage because, unfortunately, for the way the media works, for whatever reason, conservative radio hosts also have, a lot of them have TV shows, and they can share what the conservative base is really thinking. And politicians on the right listen to conservative radio because they know that's the real base and what's going on. We don't get the same type of coverage for progressives on our side. So I was really glad to share didn't mention anybody's names, but I mentioned what I really thought. Thursday, we had sort of a split in should the Democrats move forward with some kind of hearings or impeachment or just move on. And to Friday, things had changed. And I can assure you, we're not going to talk the Mueller report and what should Democrats do every day. We are going to talk about it today because everyone had the weekend to digest this even more. And I really want to hear what you have to say after what you saw this weekend, after what you may have read in excerpts or actually took time and read the entire report. But before we get into all that stuff, first, here's John Oliver. Last night on HBO on his show last week tonight on the Mueller report, and what's being read, there's a curse word blanked out, so he'll explain what it is. Here's quick number one, please.
The most shocking example of the president being ignored involved former White House counsel Don McGahn. Trump apparently called and directed him to have Mueller removed as special counsel. McGahn refused, but Trump kept pushing until finally this happened.
Instead of carrying out Trump's request, McGahn decided he would quit instead. Quote, he called his lawyer, drove to the White House, packed up his office, prepared to submit a resignation letter with his chief of staff, told Reince Priebus that the president has asked him to do crazy blank, and informed Priebus and Bannon that he was leaving.
Holy fucking blank. Preparing to quit because you're being asked to do crazy shit isn't what you expect from the White House counsel. It's what you expect from Nicolas Cage's personal assistant. No, Nicholas, I'm not constructing a 10-foot voodoo doll of you out of rare gemstones and dead crows. I have a master's degree. This is crazy shit, Nicholas. It's crazy shit.
So here's my top line. I'll let you know where I stand. I've slightly evolved. Thursday, I wanted more hearings. Friday, I debated if we should call it impeachment or not. I'm now at the point where the Constitution, Article 1, demands that Congress, the House, have impeachment hearings. And I'm going to repeat this twice today, so it's clear for everyone. Impeachment does not mean removal of the president. It does not even mean he's going to go on trial. Impeachment is simply a fact-finding investigation into whether the president committed crimes. Whatever president. I'm not saying Trump specifically. I mean, in general, that's what it's about. And based on what we saw with Robert Mueller's report, there's objective, credible evidence that Donald Trump potentially committed crimes. So Congress is charged by the Constitution to have the hearings. There's other reasons why I'll articulate, and I want to hear your views too about what you think about this. I think they have no choice. And I think that for Democrats is have impeachment hearings or go home. Don't stay in Congress if you're not going to do the job you're elected to do. This is not about politics. Politics would say you'll debate this. That's not what this is about. In fact, we're going to play some clips and go through it. Just a couple of key things I want to highlight from the report that I think says so much. First of all, we all know that Robert Mueller did not find criminal evidence of a criminal conspiracy. I should say he didn't find a requisite evidence of a criminal conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. But this quote from the report to me is stunning. It's right from the Mueller report. Quote, the investigation established that the Russian government perceived it would benefit from a Trump presidency and worked to secure that outcome. And the Trump campaign expected it would benefit electorally from information stolen and released through Russian efforts. As the report documents that the Trump campaign was communicating with WikiLeaks, that the Trump campaign, literally, it said they were talking about a press strategy, to come out and use the WikiLeaks dumps before they happened. There's even a part in the report where Mueller writes that Trump called up Gates, Rick Gates, who was deputy campaign manager, and said, in advance, there's going to be a dump coming up from WikiLeaks. We should do something about it. So you've got that going on. Now, to be completely fair here, it was not until October of 2016 that DHS confirmed that the WikiLeaks emails that they were dumping had been stolen by the Russian government. So that was the first time anyone knew with any certainty, October 2016, about a month before Election Day, that Russian government hackers were behind the data that WikiLeaks was dumping. Before then, it was suspected. But after Donald Trump knew the Russian government was involved in hacking the emails that WikiLeaks was dumping, Donald Trump still talked about WikiLeaks over 100 times in the closing month of the campaign. So there's Donald Trump using Russian military hacked data that WikiLeaks was dumping to help his campaign over and over and over. Now, regarding obstruction, and this is where the criminality really lies, and there are various things you can pick out here. You can say, he told Don McGahn to limit the investigation of Jeff Sessions. And as former prosecutors have made the point, even though certain people did not act on what Trump wanted, it still could fulfill the elements of attempted obstruction of justice. But there is one clear place in the report, and this is what I really want to bring people's attention to. One clear place where all the elements of obstruction of justice are there. And it's laid out by Robert Mueller. And that's in regards to Michael Cohen's testimony. And I'm going to read parts of this passage. So you hear word for word, not my editorializing, but actually hearing from Robert Mueller. He wrote, quote, "Before Cohen began to cooperate with the government, the president publicly and privately urged Cohen to stay on message and not flip. Cohen recalled the president's personal counsel telling him that he would be protected as long as he did not go rogue. Continuing here, quote, privately, the president told Cohen to hang in there, stay strong. People who are close to both Cohen and the president passed message to Cohen that the president loves you, the boss loves you, and everyone knows the boss has your back." That's all in quotes from the report. That's not editorializing. It continues. After it was reported that Cohen intended to cooperate with the government, however, the president accused Cohen of making up stories in order to get himself out of unrelated jams, called Cohen a rat, and on multiple occasions publicly suggested that Cohen's family members had committed crimes. Continuing quote here, "The evidence concerning the sequence of events could support an inference that the president used inducements in form of positive messages in an effort to get Cohen not to cooperate, and then turn to attacks and this word's really important, this is Mueller's word, turn to attacks and intimidation to deter Cohen from cooperating with the government." So to me, the idea of him using intimidation in this language, Mueller, is really, really important. We'll get into in a few seconds exactly why. Later in the report, and the way the report is set up, if you haven't read it, I know most people don't have time. The way it's set up, there's the facts. So Robert Mueller will say, here's all the facts. It's quote, 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 who we talked to. It's all footnoted. Then he has the facts. Then like a real legal memorandum, and that's what it reads like a legal memorandum when I was a lawyer. You have the facts. Then he sets the law. He'll cite the law. These are the statutes involved. Then he applies the facts to the law and comes to a conclusion. The only thing is because of the DOJ internal policy, it's not even a regulation policy, you cannot charge a sitting president. He never got to a point where he goes, this person should be charged with a crime. He did not, on purpose. What he did write, though, after going through everything Trump did about Michael Cohen, and very specifically these threats about Michael Cohen's father-in-law, saying things about the father-in-law like they should look into him. He's the criminal, that kind of stuff. And he was saying this in January of 2019, right before Cohen was going to testify before Congress, that there was already talk of that. There's no good faith. I'm not reading this part. I'm editorializing here, so it's clear for everyone. There's no good faith basis to bring up the father-in-law of Michael Cohen. That is simply to intimidate. So let's go back to the report here. So after all that is laid out by Robert Mueller, he writes, quote, "In analyzing the president's intent in his actions towards Cohen as a potential witness, there is evidence that could support the inference the president intended to discourage Cohen from cooperating with the government because Cohen's information would shed adverse light on the president's campaign period conduct and statements. And adding, finally, the president's statements insinuating that members of Cohen's family committed crimes after Cohen began cooperating with the government could be viewed as an effort to retaliate against Cohen and show further testimony adverse to the president by Cohen or others. The timing of the statements supports an inference that they were intended, at least in part, to discourage Cohen from further cooperation. Using the word intimidation, laying out here that the statements, the timing, there was an ongoing investigation, and that Trump was doing this really fulfills the statute 18 U.S. Code Section 1512, which is just witness intimidation and witness tampering. It says whoever knowingly uses intimidation, that's from the statute, intimidation. Remember, Robert Mueller wrote the term intimidation, that whoever knowingly uses intimidation, threatens, or corruptly, which just means with an improper motive, persuades another person or attempts, that's all you need is attempting, to do so to withhold testimony, shall be fined on this title or in prison not more than 20 years. This is a felony. This is a felony, my friends. Robert Mueller has made the case very clear with Michael Cohen. There's no good faith basis to bring up his father-in-law and he should investigate him. That was the whole Godfather 2 thing. Like, hey, you do this, I'm going to go after your father-in-law. Maybe I'll get DOJ to go after your father-in-law more. Who knows what the inference was? They know what's going on, but Trump's goal was to have him withhold testimony. That's also obstruction of justice, improper motive, to obstruct or impede a lawful investigation. That's simply the case textbook 101 obstruction. So you got two counts right there. You got witness intimidation, U.S. Code Section 1512, and you have obstruction of justice. And there's also abuse of power, which is more what they throw in when they're impeaching a president. So again, impeachment's not removal. Impeachment is a set of hearings to go exactly what Robert Mueller outlined. There's no politics here. I don't think Democrats should play games. I think they should make it very clear. This is the 10 different episodes, and that's exactly the way it was. 10 episodes of potential obstruction of justice by Robert Mueller. We are going to investigate these 4 or 5, because some are pretty clear that it didn't fulfill the statute. But some are clear that on their face they did. And they're going to say, we're going to have a testimony, impeachment to hearings on did Donald Trump intimidate a witness? Did Donald Trump obstruct justice? And you have those hearings. After the hearings are over, the House will vote. And if they vote to impeach Trump, which is simply indict him, there's a trial in the Senate. They might say, you know what, there's not enough evidence to go through that for this country. We're not going to vote to impeach. But they have to have impeachment hearings now. And you base it on the Mueller report. Robert Mueller is a lifelong Republican who was appointed by Rod Rosenstein, a Republican, who himself was appointed by another Republican, Donald Trump. So you're using the entire report drafted by a Republican, by a guy appointed by a Republican who was appointed by Donald Trump. And I think the Congress needs to articulate it. We're doing exactly what this Republican, former FBI director told us we had to investigate. And, you know, we can go into, I was looking at the Bill Clinton timeline about his impeachment hearing today. And essentially there were 4 counts, articles of impeachment in the House. They voted committee to go forward, but the full House only approved 2 articles of impeachment that went to the Senate for the trial. And that happened January 7th, 1999 is when the trial vote on impeachment was in December of 1999. January 7th, 1999, trial starts. Bill Clinton on 2 charges, perjury and obstruction of justice. And February 12th, 5 weeks later, trial ends. The GOP on the first count gets not even a bare majority. Second count, split 50-50. But of course, you need 2/3 to remove a president, so it dies. And by the way, the impeachment vote was essentially on partisan lines. So that's what happened with Bill Clinton. And a lot of people go like, oh, did they kill the Democrats politically? Well, in 2000, just a year and a half later, yes, Al Gore lost, but he won the popular vote, and he did not campaign with Bill Clinton because of this. So it contributed. In terms of Congress, Democrats did pick up 5 Senate seats, but they were in the minority, so it went to 50-50. In the House, the GOP lost 2 House seats. So it was not any kind of tidal wave in any stretch of the imagination. And that's where we are. And the question is, what do you do now? Only 2 presidents in the history of the United States have been formally impeached. Andrew Johnson, 1868, Bill Clinton, 1998. And now there's a debate among our 2020 candidates what to do. Cory Booker was getting pressed at a rally, and this is in Nevada over the weekend. I want to play, here's clip number 3, Cory Booker.
I do not think it's time to move towards impeachment because, I'll tell you why. I do not think it's time to move towards impeachment because Congress hasn't seen the report without its redactions. Well, I want to go through the processes I want to go through. I want to see it on the redacted report. I want to have Robert Mueller come and testify before the Judiciary Committee, and I want to make sure that we see the underlying evidence. So I know a lot of people are already ready to impeach, but I'm a guy that believes that this is not a partisan issue. This is a process. We need to follow a process to come to that conclusion.
I get that, but there are a lot of Democrats
calling for impeachment.
Right, and they go back and forth for a while. I think you're going to get the sense. People in the crowd wanted Mueller to testify. You heard the applause, but in the crowd, they wanted impeachment. Keep in mind, there was a poll in March before even the first Barr letter came out. Nearly 70% of Democrats at that time wanted impeachment. 70% then. If you're running for the Democratic nomination and 70% of your base wants something and you're going to oppose it, you're doing it at your political peril. And the Democratic leadership needs to listen to the base. The times of us being dismissed by longtime Democrat, I'm not saying Cory Booker's like that. I think he's being very fair. He's in the Senate. Don't forget, he's actually, Article 1 of the Constitution has the Chief Justice who then presides over the actual trial in the Senate. All 100 senators are sworn in as members of the jury. So if you're a sitting senator, you're actually going to be in the jury. So I can understand Cory Booker trying to be fair about this because he's going to be on the jury if this gets to a trial. Other Democrats are not being hesitant. And Elizabeth Warren, the most outspoken. Let's hear a clip. This is Friday night on Rachel Maddow, Elizabeth Warren, clip number 2.
The report is absolutely clear that a foreign government attacked our electoral system to help Donald Trump. He welcomed that help. And then when it was investigated by our own federal authorities, Donald Trump took multiple steps to try to obstruct justice. This is one of those moments when I get it, that there are people who think politically, no, it's going to be too hard to do this. This isn't about politics. This isn't even specifically about Donald Trump himself. It is about what a president of the United States should be able to do and what the role of Congress is in saying, no, a president does not get to come in and stop an investigation about a foreign power that attacked this country or an investigation about his own wrongdoing. Equal justice under law. No one is above the law, and that includes the President of the United States. It is the constitutional responsibility of Congress to follow through on that.
And that line, no one is above the law, we all know that. What I find remarkable is that this Mueller report goes on for 2 volumes. It's hundreds of pages. The very last line of the Mueller report, before the paragraph summary, the very last line talks about the president and obstruction of justice and says it is important to remember that no person is above the law. That's not happenstance that Robert Mueller picked at the last line in his entire report. No person is above the law. It was very clear he wants Congress to act. Now, other Democrats, from what I saw right before the show, is going through the 2020 response. Julian Castro, who was just on with Michelangelo Signorelli, he said he was happy with impeachment. It seems that he's going forward. Mayor Buttigieg said, and Beto O'Rourke said, they're not in Congress now, but they'd be happy if they went forward. Senator Harris said more information is needed before making a decision. Again, sitting senators, I think probably should be more circumspect because they're going to be on the jury about this. I completely get that. And Nancy Pelosi today has a letter that came out and said that it is important to know that the facts regarding holding the president accountable can be gained outside of impeachment hearings. She's technically right. You can do this outside of impeachment hearings. That's not what our base wants. That's what long-term establishment politicians all want. This dream that we can just get along and that somehow Congress and government's going to work the way it is. And it's equal branches of the government and separate powers and the Constitution is going to protect us all. It's not. The Constitution's a document. People are going to protect us. In this case, the Democrats in the House are charged with it. And here's Elijah Cummings from yesterday on Face the Nation. I think puts it so well. He's asked by the host, that, well, you can't win in the Senate, can you? Which is probably true. But I love this response by Elijah Cummings, who's chair of the Oversight Committee. Here's clip number 4.
If you do vote to impeach him and then the Senate votes not to remove him, won't that look like a victory for him?
It may very well, but sometime, Bob, I got to tell you, there comes a point in life where we all have to make decisions based upon the fact that it is our watch. And, history, I think, even if we did not win, possibly, if there were not impeachment, I think history would smile upon us for standing up for the Constitution.
I cannot applaud that more. What great words by Elijah Cummings, who earlier in the interview said, though, when asked, are you ready to vote for impeachment? He goes, I'm not there yet, but I think we're getting there. But he laid out what I feel in my heart, that there are 3 reasons you have to have impeachment hearings. It does not mean Trump is going to be impeached. It's simply an investigation, but it should be framed as impeachment hearings because that's what you're doing. You're basing it on Mueller's report. 3 reasons. I'll take a break. We'll take calls. First reason is you're the United States Congress. Article 1 of the Constitution by our framers gave you the power to do oversight and gave you the mandate, and you are charged with having to do this. This is your job. In fact, we all hear that there's co-equal branches of government. Well, only one branch can remove somebody for high crimes and misdemeanors. And what branch is that? It's not the executive. It's not the judiciary. It's Congress. Because the framers expected Congress to be the last line of defense against criminals in the White House or in other offices in the executive branch or even the judiciary. They charged Congress to do that. They relied on Congress. That's why they're the only branch that can remove somebody. They are there. The framers like the House is the people's house. Don't forget, the Senate, when the Constitution was drafted, was there, everyone in there was appointed by governors. So it was like rich, well-connected people. That the reason impeachment starts in the House, it was the people's house. And they wanted people elected by the people to go there and say, this is wrong. This flies in the face of what we believe this country should be about. And we're going to vote. So you have impeachment hearings. Second reason you have to have impeachment hearings. November 2018, Democrats won the House, and a big reason they won the House was to be a check on Donald Trump. It did not mean impeachment. Most Democrats we talked to did not mention impeachment, but to be a check on trying to get rid of our health care coverage and be a check on any more tax cuts for the wealthy at the expense of the rest of us. And yes, a check on his corruption. They would have not have voted in record numbers. We had over 8 million vote margin in the midterms for the House, the biggest since Watergate. We won 40 House seats. Because the American people they saw Trump for what he is, and they wanted at least one branch to be a check on this guy. So that's why you were elected. That's why Nancy Pelosi was given the gavel. And third, if you do not have impeachment hearings for Donald Trump now, not only are you going to embolden him, you're telling Trump all this stuff he did in threatening people, trying to intimidate them through tweets and Twitter, and working with the Russians. And working with WikiLeaks, knowingly working with WikiLeaks and asking Russia to help us and all that stuff is going to go unpunished completely. And that sends a horrible message to Trump. And what does it send to future presidents we elect? Do whatever you want. You're above the law if you win the election. That cannot be the country we live in. That's not what the framers wanted. That's not what any of us want. So that's why, in my view, impeachment is mandatory. Impeachment hearings. And if they have the hearings and the showing the evidence does not get to the requisite level to vote for impeachment, so be it. That's fine. And I think the Democrats should say, we're going in with an open mind. We're having impeachment hearings, an impeachment investigation. Impeachment's only an investigation into potentially indicting Trump. That's all it is. That's what we need. And Friday I was debating, should we call it impeachment or just hearings? I think you have to call it impeachment at this point. And you can have all the hearings we need on all different grounds. And then at the end, they vote. First, the House Judiciary Committee votes. And if they recommend certain articles of impeachment, it goes to the full House for a full vote. And if they vote articles of impeachment, it goes to the Senate for the trial. And you need 2/3 to convict. So let's take a break. I want to hear from you. 866-997-4748 right here on the Dino O'Donnell Show. At this point, the question is not who connected to Donald Trump as a criminal. The question is anyone connected to Donald Trump who's not a criminal?